Donald J. Trump is the person who determines who his cabinet is, not these publications that I think, frankly, have lost relevance.
The Senate will
Tulsi
ultimately
Gabbard's,
decide.
Well, the Senate will provide advice and consent, as is its constitutional obligation, but I feel confident that Tulsi Gabbard will ultimately get through.
I don't share that confidence, especially after what happened with Pete Hegseth. I'm not entirely confident about RFK Jr. either, but then again, I talk on the television for a living, and Senator Ron Johnson's actually there, so maybe we should rely on him. Joining me now, Senator, a great one from the state of Wisconsin, Senator Ron Johnson. Okay, Senator, Pete Hegseth got by the hair on his chinny chin. We had to have J.D. Vance come down and save him. Now we have RFK. Now we have Tulsi. What's it looking like?
It's very hard to predict. I think we really need presidential leadership. If he wants these nominees, he's going to have to fight for them, might have to twist a few arms. Yeah, I just came from a Republican Senate lunch and specifically talking about Bobby Kennedy's nomination, just pointed out that, what Bobby Kennedy wants to do is enormously popular with the American public. We want to know what is causing this explosion in chronic illness. Honestly, we want to know what causes autism. The dramatic increase in that tragic disease. So I've gotten to know Bobby. He's very science-based. If more science comes along or something, more truth is revealed, he'll change his opinion based on that. So I do know that a number of my colleagues who I've spoken with that were skeptical of Bobby before they sat down and talked with him came away very, very impressed with his level of knowledge, his open-mindedness as well. So again, I just ask my colleagues to be open-minded toward this nomination, and I certainly hope President Trump, pulls out all the stops to fight for him and Tulsi.
Senator, what are the concerns? Let's focus on him for now. What are the concerns with him? Because, nothing you said there is even remotely controversial. Republican, Democrat, everybody who wouldn't want us to be healthier, fewer diseases, who wouldn't want to dig into autism stuff. So if there's hesitation, what is it?
Well, the people who don't want us digging into that, remember I had a health and nutrition second opinion event with Bobby Kennedy and Dr. Casey Means and other nutrition experts. One of the, I think, best snippets of testimony came from Dr. Chris Palmer, a psychiatrist who does a lot of work on nutrition and mental health. He said, they don't want to know the root cause of these problems. So if you're producing a drug or processed food or use chemicals and pesticides, that type of thing that might be a contributor or the main cause of these things, that's going to disrupt your multi-billion-dollar business model. So those are the people that may not want to see the truth revealed on this, but the American people want to know. We want to be healthy. We don't want to be harmed by chemicals or other toxins or certainly not pharmaceuticals. So, what is interesting when I did my unofficial whip count early on in this process, whether it's Republican or Democrat senator, the conversation almost were identical. They say, there's so much that Bobby's fighting for and pushing that I just love, I just really agree with. But, and the buts were, stance on vaccines, impact on agriculture. If we start finding that, certain pesticides could be a problem, just his stance on pro-life, I think he's certainly answered that. President Trump will set the policies there, and he'll absolutely adhere to those things. So, again, talking to people who have relayed to me their conversation with Bobby, they were very impressed, and I hope we'll get their support.
Now let's switch gears to something that's more complicated and a bit more shadowy, Tulsi Gabbard, because of the position she's going for. We've got multiple U.S. senators saying on the bubble, John Kennedy on the bubble, Lindsey Graham certainly sounded like as of this moment he's a no, although he said that in Senate speak. What's the concern with Tulsi Gabbard?
I think she posed, gobbling up all of our information and wanted greater privacy. And she's basically now in support of a program that does protect, our First Amendment and our constitutional rights. So I think just relies on whether people are willing to agree that she has changed her position and probably has a little bit more nuanced stance. I think probably something that more reflects mine. I want to make sure that law enforcement has the tools to keep us safe, but I also want to make sure that law enforcement absolutely protects our constitutional rights. And I would say that hasn't been true in the past. We've seen exactly how the FISA courts were lied to and how some of these programs were used against the United States president. Because when we last re-up these programs, we were always told, show me one American citizen whose constitutional rights have been violated. I can show you President of the United States whose constitutional rights are violated. So there are problems with that. There are concerns. We need to fix those programs to protect Americans' constitutional rights. But I think that's the big question mark with some of my colleagues with Tulsi.
Senator, the FISA court itself, it was obviously put there as some sort of a shield so this couldn't be just abused, but it's not a shield. I forget what the last number was that I looked at. It's something like 98, 99% approval. A freaking monkey with a stamp could go in there and work apparently at the FISA court. So if the FISA court isn't the shield it should be, does a shield exist?
Well, it hasn't in the past. Let's put it that way. We were always, always explained to us the reason is that the FBI was so incredibly careful. The people requesting these surveillance techniques were so careful. I mean, they did their homework and they just provided the case that was just almost irrefutable. The FISA court had to go along with it. Now we found out that's just not the case. So again, that's why these programs have to be reformed. I voted for reauthorization in the past. I wouldn't vote for it in its current form. So, from that standpoint, I agree with Tulsi Gabbard's revised position on this.
Pete Hegseth got through, very grateful he did, but barely got through. Now we hear these things today. Tom Tillis planting stories in the Wall Street Journal. Mitch McConnell flat out coming out as a no. Were these no's and were these story plantings, were these about the rumors or whatnot, or was this just about protecting, again, just like you mentioned with Big Pharma, protecting the scam that is the military-industrial complex in this country now?
I can't speak of other senators' motivations and the reasons they voted for or against. From my standpoint, my default position is President Trump won a convincing election victory. He's the one who decides who he wants serving his cabinet. He'll be responsible for the people he puts in there. And my default position, barring something that was completely disqualifying. And again, the last minute rumors, boy, that sure had the reminder of Brett Kavanaugh. So again, you can't believe what people that the legacy media trots out to try and destroy a nominee. So I think most of my colleagues just ignored that.
Let's talk about spending as we wrap this thing up here. I'm hearing from people inside of your building that there are spending bills coming, big fat spending bills coming, like World War II spending levels that we are apparently going to keep maintaining. What's going on with the spending?
So my favorite topic, 2025 is halfway in the can by the time we're going to have to deal with that. So it's going to be a mess. What I'm concentrating on is 2026 and beyond. We've been stuck at this pandemic level of spending. We were at $4.4 trillion in 2019. Then we went on a massive spending spree, spent $6.6 trillion in 2020, and basically didn't reduce it. We've averaged $6.5 trillion over the last 5 years. Last year we spent $6.9. There's no justification for that. No family would borrow $50,000 to pay for medical bills, and then when they got well, keep borrowing the money, keep spending at that level. That's exactly what Uncle Sam has done. It's unacceptable. So I proposed a number of alternatives to that. Go back to Bill Clinton, increase it by population growth, inflation, add today's Social Security, Medicare, and interest. You'd be at $5.5 trillion, which would match Biden's projected revenue. We'd have a balanced budget. Again, I don't think Bill Clinton spent too little in 1998. You could do it with Obama. We'd be at 6.2, or use Trump's last budget that he submitted. The projections for 2025 would land us at about $5.5 trillion, $6 trillion when you plus it up for Social Security and Medicare. So from my standpoint, that's the range, somewhere between $5.5, $6.1 trillion versus the $7 trillion we're going to spend probably this year. It's just completely unsustainable. It's unjustified, and I'm pushing hard. I'm on Senate Budget Committee and Finance Committee, so I've got some say in terms of what happens here.
I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.